You're listening to the Turn Autism Around podcast, episode number 188. Today, we are discussing the top 5 questions about play and social skills. I'm here with Kelsey General, who's our community manager, and this is part of our top 5 question series. And I think it's great because last week, podcast 187, was a classic rebroadcast of our play and social skills podcast that we did a couple of years ago. So I think this Q&A, top 5 questions on play and social skills, is great. We talk about whether just sending children to daycare is effective in increasing social skills. What are the beginning social skills that we should be looking for or teaching? How to get kids to share better, all kinds of gems in this one. Hope you love it as much as I do. All right. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for joining us for another top 5 question segment of our podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me. Excited to talk about this one.
Yeah. So as we said last week, our podcast was a classic rebroadcast all about play and social skills. Play and social skills are pretty confusing to people, can be hard to teach, especially for kids on the spectrum. And Kelsey is our community manager. She has been for a number of years already. And we get a lot of questions within our community, also on our free, Facebook page, our free TikTok, Instagram. We get questions a lot about social and play skills. So Kelsey has come up with the top 5 questions that we get, and we're just going to have a discussion about it. So why don't we start with question number 1?
Yeah, question number 1. We do get lots of questions in general just about play and social skills. I think that's one of the first things a lot of families notice is being delayed is, oh, my child really doesn't care about the kids at the play date like the other kids do. So our first question is, when should babies and toddlers even start playing?
Right. And what are the basic social skills and things you should be looking for? And since autism is a social language communication, disorder, we are going to see differences in social skills pretty early on. So a couple references. My book, Turn Autism Around, chapter 7 is all about developing social and play skills. Also, chapter 2 is all about signs of autism. And among the first couple of social skills is really eye contact. And that starts very early on, is eye contact, babbling back to parents, even blowing raspberries and kind of that early imitation. Most kids learn all their skills, including vocal skills, as well as other motor skills through imitation. So that we call it joint attention, when they're really engaged with someone, want to share in an experience, which then around 9 to 12 months of age, definitely by 15 to 18 months of age, a child should be pointing with their index finger on a regular basis, not just once every month or two. They should be pointing not only to show parents things, but also not only to show them what they want, but also to point to things to share interest. Again, joint attention. Some of the early autism screenings involve, making a balloon fly into the air and watching the child's reaction. Do they just look at the parent like, oh my gosh, this is funny or fun or surprising, or do they run and just get the balloon and just bring it back and, want to do it themselves? Also, one of the tests, and I don't know that this isn't a standardized test, but spilling water on a baby's high chair spilling water. And if it's a typically developing baby, and I'm not sure what age, but, they would be like, uh-oh, even if they can't talk, they would look around like, whoa, we have a problem kind of thing. And where an autistic baby would just splash in it and look for that cause and effect. Now, again, typical babies of a certain age might splash too, but there's all of these milestones that kids are meeting, depending if they're 4 months and splash in the water versus 9 months and splashing in the water, and 12 months when they're splashing in the water. That really could be a delayed social in play. So we are looking for eye contact, pointing, joint attention, wanting to share in interests, bringing stuffed animals to the parents. Those are all early social skills. Now, I know you asked about play skills, and really we're looking for kind of those social skills and joint attention first, but initially that play would be very much like cause and effect play of, Jack in the Box, liking things like that, even building a tower of blocks, putting things in. That's why some of our early learner programs like the shoebox is so successful, because kids initially like to put things in. So those are some of the early social and play skills. And then after that, it kind of goes from, solitary play with a variety of objects to sharing and playing. One of the reasons I don't talk a lot about social skills and talk more about language skills is they go hand in hand. And once we improve the language and the imitation skills, a lot of times that also boosters joint attention and play skills. But I'll stop talking. Kelsey, is there anything you want to add to that answer?
I think that's pretty good. I would agree with you that joint attention is one of the early things, and it's not something you want to skip, even if you have a 3 and 4-year-old who you're just starting to tune into Mary's podcasts now and information. It's not something you want to go and ignore, because it is really important. Like, if a child looks at an object and then never looks at you, like, we're not in a place of learning. Like, if they're not curious about their environment and knowing that an adult can help them learn, we're not ready to learn. And that's why a lot of the early learner programs in your courses, like the shoebox and the potato head, like when you're bringing things, like it's showing the child, oh, when mom and dad have something, they're telling me something, and it helps build that. And it's a really important step that you don't want to miss. As far as play, we get a lot of questions about how do I get my 2-year-old to share? And it is important to look at those milestones and realize that that's not a 2-year-old developmental skill. At that point, they're just parallel playing. You really should have enough for everyone to play with their own things and not do a lot of sharing yet. They don't have the language for it. Even typical 2-year-olds, they don't have the understanding. And so really watching those milestones is important. We are
Speaking of milestones too, I recently did a podcast, well, not that recent, a couple months ago, with Dr. Cheryl Tierney Avis, and it was all about the CDC milestones and how they've changed. And wherever you are in the world, you can always Google, what should my 9-month-old be doing, or CDC milestones for 9-month-old. And while they're not perfect, as we discussed in the episode a few months ago, they are 75% of that age child should be doing it. So we also have blogs on pointing, on eye contact, which we don't directly teach. We have a podcast on teaching greetings, which is another early social skill. We can link all of those in the show notes here. So when I say the show notes, that is going to be marybarbera.com/188.
Yeah. So I think that covers kind of our first question, and make sure to watch those milestones, because even though the social moms group might think your 2-year-old should share, that doesn't mean they developmentally should. So our next question is, my child's doctor and even my husband say that if I put my child in daycare, they'll begin to play with other kids and build the social skills that they're delayed in. Is that true?
I actually thought that that was true when we enrolled Lucas into a typically developing toddler preschool program when he was 2, and he was a new 2. His birthday is July 3rd. So he was a young 2, but my husband was convinced that we needed to start. We didn't know he had autism, although my husband first mentioned it at 21 months of age, which I'm sure if you've listened to some podcasts, you know that I was in a deep state of denial, and that so he went to preschool, and he actually, and this is in chapter 7 of my book, he actually did pretty well. A lot of the kids had bad separation anxiety. He was very laid back child, always. And so I could drop him off. He didn't fight over toys because he really wasn't interested in toys. He would sit in circle time without a problem. He didn't cry, he liked to paint. And so it wasn't until mid-year, when it was time to enroll Lucas in the 3-year-old's preschool the following year, that the teacher and the director requested a meeting with me and my husband, and told us that they thought he was not ready to go up to the 3-year-old class. I didn't know any of this. Like, I didn't know that when you go from 2-year-old to 3-year-old class, like the ratio gets worse. So there's less teachers with more kids, that going from 2-year-old to 3-year-old preschool, you need to be potty trained. Well, I mean, he wasn't even talking really. I mean, he had pop out words. I didn't know what pop out words were. He was in speech therapy, and they also told me, which I didn't know, that summer birthday boys are usually held back for kindergarten and those sorts of things, that they tend to be more immature, because there were kids almost a year older in the same class. So, you can make a lot of excuses for why he was delayed. They didn't mention the word autism at that meeting when he was 2.5, but when we left, my husband's like, they think he has autism just like I do. And so we started to get more serious about looking into the diagnosis. So it is not true. I've worked with hundreds of kids directly, and many of them, and a lot of our online participants, they're just like, put your child in daycare and they'll, sink or swim, they'll figure it out, they'll be social. But what I see happening, especially with kids, like for Lucas, we got extremely lucky that he had no problem behaviors that he just had. Like, I can't think of 100 clients that I've had in the past that could have done that well in preschool, by themselves, without a diagnosis, without any support. Like, it just, he had a great teacher and a great assistant teacher, and they were very mothery with him, and he was fine. He was safe. But most kids do get into lots of trouble when they're put into a placement that's not great. And it's not their fault. So if you have a child who is not passing, can't go to the 3-year-old preschool because they're having problem behaviors, they're not potty trained, those sorts of things, it's not their fault. If you have a child that gets kicked out of preschool, which happens, or daycare, it's not their fault. And it's not your fault either if you're the parent, and it's not your fault as a professional. It's just sometimes kids are in an environment that's not appropriate for them at the moment. So if you are, and some people need to put their kids in daycare, they've been in daycare their whole lives, the parents both work, there's all these situations. So there's no judgment here on my part or Kelsey's part. But if a child's having problem behaviors, he's, hitting or biting or kicking, if he's rolling around on the floor. Like, I even went to see a child that I was consulting with, and this child was in daycare just one day a week for socialization. And I looked over and he was licking the wall. I was just there to observe. Of course, when I saw that, I got up, removed the child from the wall. Like, you don't want kids licking walls. But I was there to observe to see if this is useful. Well, it wasn't useful. She was wandering around. She was not making any gains. Like, there's no point in having a child somewhere where they're not having some success, they're not learning. And even if you have a child like Lucas, him sitting there, he needs one-to-one engagement. He needed, he got into an ABA program shortly after, when he was diagnosed. It's like he needs to catch up, not just sit there and go backwards, because those kids are 2 or 3 and they are pretend playing, they are waiting in line, they are sharing, they are imitating, communicating, telling the teacher if there's a problem, telling the teacher if they have to go to the bathroom. And it's not fair, no matter how old the child is. If the child is 3, but functioning as a 1-year-old, you can't put them in a 3-year-old class and expect everything to go well. Same thing for any age. If there's a huge discrepancy, it's not fair to the child, and there needs to be some other plan.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the most common misconceptions I hear is, oh, I'll just put them in daycare and it'll be fine. And I think if some kids have the prerequisite skills, it could help. If they have some imitation skills, they don't really have behavior problems, there's enough support. I think there's situations where it could help, but I think everyone should go into these things as, if you are just doing it for socialization, as let's try this for a couple weeks. Because sometimes, we see it all the time in our courses, no problem behaviors at home or problem behaviors at home managed, and they're hitting, kicking, and biting at daycare. Well, and they're not. And while we should go through a lot more problem solving if they need to be there for work and, situations like that, for just socialization, they're just learning problems, honestly, because they don't have enough support and they don't have enough skills to navigate that situation. I will say, because I'm a single mom and need to work, Brentley's been in and out of daycares since he was 2.5 with a 1-to-1, always has a 1-to-1. And even still, we didn't add a social goal for him until he started showing motivation in wanting those social goals. The only goal was he needed to be there and be safe and to be engaged with an adult. Like, he was never there for socialization. And now at 8, he has some social goals and he's doing great with them. But there would have been no point putting anyone through that when he didn't have the skills.
Right. And Lucas did go to the 3-year-old class in that same typical preschool, and he went with an ABA therapist. So that's another issue I see with daycare and preschool, is all day on Friday just for socialization. Like, that's way too long, especially when this child doesn't even have a 1-to-1 or has a 1-to-1 for part of the whole day. Yep. So Lucas had a 1-to-1 then, the whole time after that, but it also was only 2 hours twice a week.
Yeah.
So, and we could use our home program to prime the skills, to work with the teacher for homeschool communication. He still wasn't having any problem behaviors and those sorts of things. So we didn't want to stop it. And that worked out well. Again, it's not going to work out well for everybody, because if you have to work, but this also is true if your child is at an ABA clinic, a school, a developmental disability school. We have to make sure that wherever they're at, they get a lot of 1-to-1 attention. They get a lot of actual skills training, actually responses, hundreds and hundreds of responses per hour, not just sitting. I hate to even use this word, but like, I feel like in some situations, like, they're just warehousing kids. Like, it looks worse than babysitting.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your child is going somewhere and you don't know what's happening there, if they're not happy and they're not making progress, and they don't have hundreds of learning opportunities per hour or at least per day, and you don't get any communication to show you what they're working on, like a little smiley guy at the end of the day, or a frowny guy, or he had a tough day. This is more of a systemic problem, probably out of the scope of this little podcast, but It's not just about typically developing schools or clinics or anything. We want to make sure that the child is happy, safe, and learning. And if
Yep.
that's not happening, if the child's crying to go, having problem behaviors there, it needs to be addressed.
Yep. So long story short, long answer short, no, a child won't just learn social skills through osmosis of being around other children. It just doesn't happen.
Right. And we can plan out social engagement, and we can
Yes.
plan, and we can teach, and some kids, like you said, do pretty well in daycare or preschool with or without support, depending on what level they're at. And it should always be a goal that you can socialize with other kids. And
Yep.
And so you just have to kind of take baby steps there.
Yeah, exactly. So our next question kind of runs into this. My child isn't interested in other children or their siblings. What can I do to help them want to be with their peers?
Yeah, and we get this question a lot too when mom has another baby that enters the family, and like how to, keep the kids safe, and how to, if there's an age difference, if there's problem behaviors at hand. So one of the things is just making sure that whatever environment they're at, they have enough support there to keep everybody safe, to keep the child safe, to keep the other kids safe, to engage with the kids. So when the therapist used to go with Lucas when he was 3, I sent in a box, a plastic box with a cover with puzzles and games that Lucas liked and could do at home, but we kept that box at preschool. And so when the therapist was there, she would get out the box, not to just engage with Lucas one-on-one, but to be like the kid magnet, to be like, okay, we can have 2 kids play with Lucas for this game or this puzzle. Oh, okay, Susie and Johnny, you want to sit down and take turns with us and play? And so it was her job not to just keep Lucas safe and engaged, but actually to bring in the other kids when it was appropriate. And it was amazing. Like these little 3-year-olds were junior therapists, and he went on to go to public school with some of them. And so pairing up toys that the child with autism is good at with the kids, having support with a newborn coming into the house, prepare if you can in advance with doll babies. And when you bring the child home, make sure that you don't leave the child in the room with the child, especially if they have any kind of problem behaviors. Even if they just starting to cause an effect. I remember I interviewed Chino's mom, and we can link hers in the show notes. But when I started with Chino, he was like 21 months old, and he had a newborn sister, and he had a 3-year-old sister. Mom was like losing her mind, and he would like overturn the bassinet just to kind of get a reaction out of the baby and the mom, and throw over a table, which could have definitely hit the baby. And so keeping them safe, and then pairing, being in the room, being in the middle of the older child and the baby, and having, the baby maybe give the child something that they like, that the baby can hand over. And it's just a slow process of pairing with reinforcement and keeping everybody safe.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think, again, when we think about it from the child with autism's point of view, I'm at a play date with 6 other kids. Now I have to share my toys. Mom is telling me I have to put this here. There's often a lot of rules when there's other kids around, which can make kids not want to be around other kids. And so a lot of, like you said, Mary, pairing the kids with good things, even if when the other kids are around, there's no expectation that they have to do anything besides be on their own and just the other kids around. And then you might start with the other kids giving the child a piece of their puzzle or a piece that they can line up, or you just have to meet kids where they are. But we have to remember the same things that apply to anything. If demands are too high, I have to share, I have to talk, I have to,
Wait in line.
wait
take
in line.
turns.
I can't have mom's attention because the baby's got her attention. And now I have no reinforcement because I don't even have the toys I want, how I want them. Like, why would I want to be there? I
Mhm.
wouldn't. And I think that's what often gets paired up with our kids. I think especially children with delays in autism they have a lot of different motivations, and we have to work within that to pair the peers with them. And also, it's off. I saw this meme once on Facebook and it hit me. We're always teaching kids with autism how to socialize and play with other kids, but we also have to teach the siblings and the other kids how to play in a way that Johnny or Susie might like as well, if we want Johnny or Susie to want to be there.
Which I'm not sure where this is. I'm sure I talked about it somewhere, but there is a great book that's free now. I bought it decades ago. It's called Playtime, Social Time. And it has, in the middle of the book, it has like, you gather a box of pretend kitchen items and pretend food. And then it has kind of scripts that you can modify to teach how to play with kitchen stuff. So anyway, in this book, in the middle of it, it has that. And at the end of the book is more like a script language for learning, for teaching, typically developing kids how to play with affected kids who need help. And so we can link that in the show notes because I found it for free years ago. And it's a great resource if you dive in and really look at the middle part and the end part, especially if you're a professional, like guidance counselors, teachers, BCBAs, speech therapists who work with groups. It would be amazing.
Yeah, that's really good. Our next question is, my child doesn't play with toys. What can I do to help them play with toys?
Yeah. So we see a lot of delayed play, like a child may want to just line things up, or a child may want to just stack blocks over and over again. And or my former client Jack used to like to put straws in bottles repetitively, and you think, well, that's not really hurting anything. But if a child can play repetitively with the same toys over and over again, for hours, or even, 30 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever, it is a problem because the child needs to be learning during that time. And if you need to get a shower and that keeps the child safe to play with blocks or put straws in repetitively, that's fine as long as they're safe. But for, hours or minutes on end, it really is a problem. So the other thing kids can get really hooked on is electronics, watching the same movies over and over again, playing with the same apps, becoming very addicted to screen time. I know Lucas didn't really have a lot of self-stim behaviors, but he watched a ton of TV, and he liked, and he still likes, VHS tapes, because you could, it's the same movie, over and over again. So he knows, okay, he's a big Barney fan. Baby Bob comes out at this point, and he likes the routine, the watching the same thing over and over again, and a lot of kids do. So getting kids interested in toys is, again, a pairing process, and sometimes you have to start with toys that are more delayed. So for a 3-year-old, for instance, who's not interested in any toys, well, you're probably trying to pair up toys that are for a 3 or 4-year-old, or 3 to 5-year-old level. When with our course, things like that, we tend to go back to hammer and ball and very delayed kind of play, very infant and toddler toys, because that they kind of have to pass through that cause and effect before you can get into higher level play, before you could get to, pretend play, dress up play, making up schemes of the construction workers and what they're going to say or what they're going to think. They can't do that unless they have the language and social skills earlier to support that. So sometimes you have to kind of go backwards. Also teaching object imitation, which I did a blog on, we can link in the show notes. Teaching those early imitation skills, teaching language skills. This is all going to help with play.
Yeah. And we talk about that when we answer this question in our courses. It's like one of the first things I ask when someone asks about was, how far in the courses are you? How is table time going? And you talk about Chino, and I think in our VB bundle, actually, how you didn't teach him any play skills directly. Yep. You just taught him language skills, and then he was pretend playing with the baby in the bed. And I think that just goes to show that as we build these foundational skills that so many kids are lacking, the play comes. And like Mary said, open-ended toys like building Legos or creative type things is often harder for kids with autism than close-ended things like puzzles, cause and effect, things that only work one way. Those are going to be much easier for you. Some kids do like electronic toys with lights, but I would keep those minimal, like have one out at a time. And if you do have blocks, being really, you can't just give a child a pile of blocks and expect them to know what to do with them. Show them a routine, stack and crash, and then show them a different routine, line up and sweep, or, also video modeling, which I believe, Mary, you have.
Yeah, video modeling. We have a podcast, blog, and it's also in the book, a whole page on video modeling. Yeah.
And you can make your own. Especially for the kids who like electronics. I remember one day we had some Lego around, and I typed in like Lego on YouTube for Brentley, and he got hooked on some Lego City video. Anyway, and the next day he built what he saw in the video, and he did the whole script of it. And he's a kid who likes to script, so that's his strength. But then we can use that script to substitute in different steps to that same play scheme, and you can build off of it. So video modeling can be really powerful. But obviously in the early days, you want to stick with those cause and effect and be really purposeful with teaching play, because it's not necessarily something that all kids just know how to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a skill, and it's developmentally sequenced. So you can't just, if you have a 4-year-old that's not interested in toys, you can't just look for 4-year-old toys or expect pretend play, because it's just not going to happen. But if you go back and kind of support the child and teach play and teach language and imitation skills, they'll get farther. The other thing that when you were talking, I was thinking is also don't expect like age appropriate play for everything. Like if a 3 or 4-year-old likes to, doesn't like to do much and just likes to bounce on a ball, rock, and flap their hands, you're going to have to go way back and get those baby type of cause and effect. We talk about all of this in the course. If you want to look into joining us in our online courses, you can attend a free workshop. We link that in the show notes every single time. So, attend a workshop, join us. Like you might think, oh, I saw somebody that listens to our podcast a lot on our free Facebook page. And she said, oh, I listened to that one episode like 3 times, to try to glean, like, it's super important that if you're listening at this point, I mean, we're half an hour in, if you're listening and you're learning, really join our online course community. I think it's the best way where we can support you. It'll be so much more efficient than listening to this, because we do produce a ton of free content. In our online course, we curate the content. We bring it down to the step-by-steps you need teach you exactly what to do for your child or clients, no matter what their age or ability level is. As long as they're functioning at a 1 to 5 year old level, not conversational, we can definitely help you help them.
Well, and
But
we answer all these questions every
Yep.
day in the private Facebook group. You know, you can ask, I won't say you can ask as many questions as you want, but you can ask most as many questions as you want. And we're answering these questions with the same responses we're giving you or similar every day. So it's really the best place for support for sure. We have one more question about play and social skills. And it's, my child is grabbing from other kids and struggling in daycare. What can I do to help them share? And let's just assume this is like a 3 or 4 year old probably.
yeah, so
Under that, they just need a lot of support.
yeah, so no matter what age or ability level, if your child is showing problem behaviors, the demands are too high, reinforcement's too low. So you need to change both. You need to make the demands easier and not expect these higher level social skills unless all the rest of them are in place. Like if you can bring your child to a table and they'll sit there for 15 minutes and do puzzles and cause and effect toys and shoebox and potato head, and they can engage with you with or without language, that's a really good way. I mean, you're swapping items, you're not letting them sit and obsess over things. You know, they're having joint attention, they're learning, they're hopefully happy. We always want our kids to be happy when they're learning at the table. Those skills will transfer pretty easily to other kids, other adults. And so, if the child is at daycare, I mean, we talked about daycare and preschool a lot, if they're grabbing, they probably don't have enough support there. If they do have a one-to-one aid, no matter what the age of the child, especially if they have major safety problems or need, having hitting and those sorts of things. We did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago with Rachel. We can link that in the show notes, where her 3-year-old, typically developing child who had a speech delay in the past was throwing and hitting at my house, and we kind of reversed engineered it. That might be super helpful too. But that one-to-one aid, if you have one, needs to be right there with the child, not sitting back waiting for there to be a fire to put out. They need to be right there. Even in an IEP, like in our advocacy bonus video, which is in our online course, we talk about maybe in the IEP that one-to-one, it needs to be specified that the one-to-one on the recess yard might be within arm's distance. If the child is at risk of hurting another child or leaving the playground yard, like kids need more support, more modeling, more positives, more reinforcement for good waiting, good turn taking, good playing. These are all skills that are involved when you talk about preschool, when you talk about anything, when you just talk about the day. These are all at play. So know that it's not your child's fault. It's not your fault. The child is telling you that they need more support and they need more reinforcement for doing the right thing. I heard a good thing the other day is, if your child or clients are crying or having a problem behavior, if they can't talk or can't talk well, but imagine, what would my child be telling me if I could find out exactly what was wrong? I mean, we know if a child's flopping on the ground because they don't want to come in from recess, if they could talk and they could calmly say, "That's not fair. You didn't tell me it was, well, I want 5 more minutes," whatever the situation is, know that problem behavior is communication, and we just need to help our kids communicate better and better so that they can improve their social skills and they can improve their quality of life, whatever that is.
Yeah, this just goes back to me on throwing kids in daycare is not going to create social skills. It's going to create social problems.
There's a good
If they have a one-to-one, someone needs to be there. And this is again the importance of table time, gaining a co-at control, which is when the child repeats you, so that if you see a child looking at the truck, prompt them to say truck. And when they say truck, help get it. And if you're still teaching this skill, one other strategy might be to have a bin of toys at daycare that are only his, that he doesn't have to share. And so you can have short times of practicing sharing and short times where every kid knows it's not Johnny's sharing time right now. Johnny's sharing
or two boxes, one for Johnny's box and one for Johnny plus 2 kid box.
Yeah. And this is our share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, we just made up a new technique.
We just made up a new technique, but it's seriously because it's like, or also when we were doing gift programs with Brentley, we did a lot of trading, and we do a lot of this in our online program when kids are really stuck with holding things. It might be like, oh, here, maybe Johnny's looking at the truck and you see Johnny looking at the truck. You might go up to that other kid and be like, oh, did you see this cool ball? And maybe that kid puts the truck down and now you can give Johnny the truck. So it's like, again, the bottom line is more support and more prompting of the skills you want to see and then reinforcing them. And that takes a lot of practice.
And it takes a lot of skill too.
A lot of skill.
So the one-to-ones that are supporting our kids need a lot more training and support than they probably are getting. And that's like a whole nother thing. But, I really want to encourage the parents out there to know that you can become the captain of the ship. The professionals listening, I really want to encourage you to help these parents become the captain of the ship. Welcome them in. Really make it be a team effort. But the parent is, has a lot of motivation to help their child and will be there in the long term. So, we've been doing a lot. Kelsey's been really leading the way with our Instagram account, and Rachel's been leading the way with our TikTok account. And we've been doing a lot of little videos on, kids shouldn't be crying when they're going to therapy. Parents should be involved. So I just want to encourage everybody who is on any platform. You can go to marybarbera.com/Facebook/TikTok /Instagram /YouTube. Follow me, but like, share, comment. It takes a lot of energy to produce all this free content, but we want to reach millions. We are reaching millions. And with your help, we can even reach more people. So thank you so much. I think this was a great little episode on the top 5 questions we get on social and play skills. Thanks so much for your time today, Kelsey. And thank you for tuning in. We will see you right here next time.